Hello, Virginia. Hello, hello. This is Doris Kinnick from Virginians for Safe Technology. This is a safe technology overview that you are welcome to use with any representatives in the state of Virginia. This has been a labor of love by myself and the other members of Virginians for Safe Technology, as well as some of our PowerPoint slides have been shared with us from CC Doucette. So thank you for your time and listening, and I look forward to presenting and sharing with you. My name is Doris Kinnick, and last year in 2019, when schools became virtual, I began noticing that my daughter sitting in front of a computer screen was having a lot of stomach aches and nosebleeds, and just something wasn't quite right. And so I started looking into it. What I discovered really shocked me. There are biological harms from wireless technology that have been studied for years. And on one hand, there are non-telecommunications industry peer-reviewed funded studies that prove biological harm. And on the other hand, there are industry studies that show no evidence of harm. So as a parent and educator, I needed to do my due diligence, and will share with you what I, myself, and others have discovered and learned from others who've paved the way. You will be able to find this PowerPoint on our website at virginiansforsafetech.org so that you can utilize it yourself as well. So our mission is we are desiring responsible technology to protect current and future generations of Virginians. The Virginians for Safe Technology mission is to advocate for safe, affordable, accessible, and socially responsible technology for all. We provide information, education, resources, and support to empower consumers and lawmakers to make informed decisions and act as stewards of their community. So today, in the next 30 minutes, I plan to give you a broad overview, starting with the cell phone fine print and educating you on biological harms of radio frequency radiation and this new fifth generation technology, starting with science, history, health, concerns from doctors, electromagnetic frequency scientists, and actions that are being taken around the world to make a difference. We want to work with Board of Supervisors and others to get fiber optic wired broadband technology and not small cell antennas with 5G into neighborhoods. We want to keep safety at the forefront of your mind when making decisions about adding technology to the county and schools and public right-of-ways. So without further ado, let's start with some legal fine print. There's some fine print on your cell phone that you may or may not be aware of that tells us not to keep this device on or near our bodies. This data comes from IEEE, the Institute of Electrical Engineers. It's not been created by scientists or medical doctors. These standards come from back in the 90s based on how much heat it would take to affect the skin. Thermal effect is the only standard they use to determine how much radiation could be emitted from devices. No testing has been done on children, no testing on fetuses or the elderly or people with pre-existing health conditions. It has been said by the industry that heat equals harm, but that is not accurate. We now know that non-thermal radiation is harmful as well. So to find it on your own phone, you can go under Settings, then you can remember this acronym GAL, G, go under General, A, About, L for Legal and Regulatory, and what you will find is there is RF exposure listed there. And it also encourages you to not place the device on or near your body. Something else I discovered is that the Federal Communications Commission is a captured agency. There's a link here to an article written by a study from Harvard from the Center of Ethics, and explains how the FCC is dominated by the industry it presumably regulates. Mark Warner, who is one of our Virginia senators, receives significant funding from the telecommunications industry, and the FCC has a huge lobby industry that funds many and many politicians. Another concern is that the FDA has been petitioned because there's a conflict of interest, as those in charge profit handsomely from the wireless industry. This petition has been sent. And the notion that exposure to radio frequency radiation, also known as microwave radiation, is not harmful to humans, which has been the underlying principle of all federal legislation and regulations regarding wireless technologies for more than 20 years, has been proven false. So Let's talk about the precautionary principle. In 2007, world scientists got together and recognized that this technology was initially designed for warfare. It came from our military all around the world. So they gathered up the research that had been done for decades already and said this does look to be harmful, but we need to understand it in the context of using it in the commercial sector. Some countries decided to invoke the precautionary principle, which says, if there is evidence of harm, then you stop and do the research. And once it's been proven safe, then you continue. Makes sense, right? Here in the USA, we did not do that. We did not follow the precautionary principle. So they did more studies for 5 years, from 2007 until 2012, and not just a couple, 1,800 new studies. The large amount of them did prove, in fact, that there is biological harm. That was reported out in a very large document called the Bioinitiative Report. In 2014, there was an executive summary that this board and others might like to begin examining. It's 9 pages and lists all the above plus more findings. So in the last decade, what's happened? We've all adopted this Wi-Fi technology into our homes, in schools, and public buildings, without any safety information provided to accompany these choices. The problem is, many people simply aren't informed. It's like throwing a pebble into a pond when you think of classrooms with wireless routers and Chromebooks, and in high schools where teenagers also have cell phones, all of which has radiation coming at the public, specifically to the students and the staff in classroom settings. And our children are the most vulnerable. What does science tell us? Well, the World Health Organization classifies cell phone radiation as a Class 2B carcinogen. And the U.S. National Toxicology Program concludes clear evidence from 2 and 3G cell phones. This was a study done in November of 2018. The study was done on rats to prove harm. Dr. Martin Pall, Professor Emeritus at the Biochemistry and Basic Medical Sciences paper, provides evidence that you can see here above. It has been proven that electromagnetic field exposures can cause all of these ailments: cancer, DNA mutation, infertility, neurological damage, cell death, oxidative stress, hormone disruption, excess calcium and signaling disruption, microwave sickness, headaches, nose, ear bleeds, insomnia, pain, dizziness, anger, anxiety, depression, cognitive impairment, behavior issues, learning disabilities, and more. Our children are especially vulnerable. In Massachusetts, the schools did their due diligence and listened to CC Doucette and the scientists and created a best practices for schools. Scientists have stated that the only safe technology is wired. There are measures that we can each take to lessen our exposure and inform the public. Children have never been studied. Unfortunately, they are becoming the evidence. Our kids are sicker today than in any year previous. Waldorf schools took out Wi-Fi. In San Francisco, California teachers' unions passed resolutions to reduce exposure. What's frightening to me and frustrating is that the World Health Organization knows the harms, yet their cover-up is costing us human life, since electromagnetic frequencies and radio and RF frequencies are preventable toxic exposures. Have you ever seen a commercial about protecting your family from cell phone radiation? It's time that we do. So the science is clear. Our planet is being impacted by this invisible biological harm. This picture down here to the bottom left shows a picture of what our world would look like as if we could see this RF radiation. These images were created by an astrobiologist and former employee at NASA who explained that science behind wireless technology, and you can read more at the link, in the link here. Scientists have proven that RF radiation can be absorbed by insects, raising their internal temperature, interfering with reproduction, triggering other responses. It has dramatic implications for our natural world as this 5G technology pushes ahead with their plans to blanket the country with these powerful 4 and 5G antennas. Birds have been impacted in regards to their migration, impaired reproduction, interference in their ability to fly and regulate themselves. The Environmental Health Trust has done a great job of raising awareness. They have a 10-year report. They've been trying to raise awareness of wireless harms to humanity since 2007. in order to enact some meaningful policy change. There is also the component that has to do with all these wireless devices, computers, cell phones, etc., that we are using. They oftentimes require minerals to be extracted, like copper and lithium, for example, and oftentimes they're being mined under very abusive circumstances. For example, the Democratic Republic of Congo, where lithium is being extracted for computers. What we know is that telecommunications engineers may know how their technologies work, but what they don't know is how these new technologies will affect our natural world. More study is urgently needed before proceeding with the widespread deployment of powerful new 4 and 5G antennas. The more we consume and demand, the more the technology produced, the more we're impacting the planet and blanketing the earth when we're not wired. Let's talk about cell towers. So our United States standards are not safe. As you can see in this diagram down to the bottom right, the US has among the highest allowable exposure limits in the entire world. Canadians are working on adjusting their levels to protect the public. So it really comes down to a decision. You can either only read the industry-funded papers or look at the non-industry funded science. The question is, who wants to wait until the years unfold like it did with asbestos and tobacco before our government steps up and conclusively says, yes, this is carcinogenic? With tobacco and asbestos, the science was done for decades. It took a long time for our government to admit that there are a lot of politics involved. And at that Harvard University study I referred to previously, put out a study called Captured Agency. It's a 59-page report out of the Law School Center for Ethics, which reveals how our FCC has put our guidelines in place and in some ways suppressed evidence of harm. And it created doubt, so the public will continue to buy their products. Meanwhile, the science is mounting greatly to say this is toxic. We need to not have these towers near our playgrounds, schools, and childcare centers. If there already is Wi-Fi coverage in areas, why are we allowing more? Hope you're back with me. Why are we allowing more and more towers to be dispersed? Here in my county of Chesterfield, there are already over 100 towers alone. And if the map and the coverage that I was given is correct. What is 5G? 5G is the 5th generation of technology. They use millimeter waves which have been used in the military for crowd control. They're shorter and more intense than previous generations. It's promised faster entertainment downloads and smart cities, etc. The Internet of Things, driverless cars eventually. What we know is that these 5G millimeter waves don't travel as far as the 3G or 4G. So millions of small cell antennas will be installed near homes and public right-of-ways. Every 2 to 10 houses, they have already been started to go up here throughout Richmond and other areas here in Virginia. There are thousands of 5G satellites in the sky, and in a congressional hearing, U.S. Senator Blumenthal raises concerns and questions at the congressional hearing. There's a great link to that video in here. The National Toxicology Program did a series of studies tracking carcinogens using mice and rats, and they ended up having cancer. So often, what happens to rodents happens to humans. Epidemiologic studies have shown brain and heart cancer. Our government has come out with a study saying it is carcinogenic. That leads me to ask for your help in using the precautionary principle here in the United States, and especially in Virginia, in order to protect our citizens by not rolling out small cell antenna, instead choosing to use fiber optic broadband. Former president of Microsoft in Canada, Frank Clegg, has blown the whistle on the harms of 5G. Okay, what do doctors have to say? Physicians unite as electrosensitivity is also being recognized as a medical diagnosis and was described as microwave illness by NASA, the EPA, and the Department of Defense decades ago in the military personnel who were exposed to radio frequency electromagnetic radiation. The same symptoms are now reported in people from all walks of life with near exposure to cell towers, smart meters, and wireless devices. These symptoms include headaches, memory loss, insomnia, and heart palpitations, and more. Doctors are calling for delaying 5G on the news. You can see a link to the article here if you go to our website. There's been a global letter written to the United Nations. Electromagnetic frequency scientists from around the world have appealed to the World Health Organization and the United Nations to seriously weigh heavily the findings of the independent, non-industry associated electromagnetic frequency science. As of November 29th, 2020, 254 electromagnetic frequency scientists from 44 nations and 15 supporting scientists from 11 nations have signed the appeal. And looking to the policy to the right, the international policy, you will find that Italy and over 500 governments issued resolutions to halt 5G. What did they do in Greece? In Greece, 5G test cities have chosen to not renew their licenses. In Belgium, Brussels has halted the 5G rollout. In Ireland, 5 councils voted to halt 5G, and the list goes on. As I mentioned previously, microwave illness has been known about for decades in military personnel exposed to radio frequency electromagnetic radiation, and this image is from microwavevets.com. If I may discuss just for a few minutes the symptoms of microwave illness, also known as electromagnetic sensitivities. Dr. Michael Paul has been studying this and has discovered that something is going wrong with what's called the voltage-gated calcium channel activation, because we are at our core biologically electrical beings, and we have cell communications that happen all the time. And by and large, this radiation affects our body chemistry at the cellular level. When we're exposed to electromagnetic radiation, it can compromise the cell membrane and cause a leakage of the voltage-gated calcium channels. Pulsed radiation, which 5G is, creates a cytokine storm in the body, which we know vitamin D supplementation and antioxidants are essential, which we want to help make sure the public is educated on. Another finding is that melatonin is also affected. So when we sleep normally, it's used to recharge our pineal gland, which cleans up free radicals. However, when we have devices by our bedsides with electromagnetic radiation fields surrounding us while we're sleeping, the glands aren't able to do their jobs. So if you know anyone with cancer, you'll likely know that they have low levels of melatonin. In controlled medical settings, radiation is used to make bones grow, etc., right? But in a controlled setting in a good way. However, we've adopted Wi-Fi in an uncontrolled setting, which is exacerbating the growth of cells that we may not necessarily want to be growing. Evidence is there as you sift through it, looking for non-industry funded research. The National Institute of Health database, if you go in there and type in harmful effects of electromagnetic radiation, you will find thousands of studies. Unfortunately, the FCC is following the tobacco playbook and tries to suppress industry evidence of harm and discredit doctors and scientists. Decades of research on tobacco harms, and it took until the 60s for the Attorney General to admit it. In my opinion and others, electromagnetic frequency frying of our next generation, our children, is above and beyond the tobacco playbook, because even in plain sight of what everyone has found and is saying about how dangerous and bad this stuff is, the industry is still denying it because they build into the system that they can't be sued for environmental effects, which also includes health impacts. This is a very important point to remember. So what are people doing about it? Well, there are lots of cities taking action. In 2013 and again in 2019, people from Boston, Massachusetts and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania gave documents to the FCC to reevaluate their RF standards from 1996. Whoops. Massachusetts updated their codes to protect people from small cell antennas. Shelburne has discovered that within 1,500 feet, the studies have been found that the largest spike in health effects occur around cell towers, again, within 1,500 feet. So they've changed their bylaws to make sure that cell phone towers cannot be placed within 1,500 feet. And Easton, Connecticut, has banned 5G rollout, citing lack of safety evidence. Hawaii has been able to pass a resolution to halt 5G until it's proven safe. Telecommunication companies are losing the battle. They can't get insured, and counties and cities are taking their powers back. Here in Virginia, Stonebridge Park, there was no cell phone tower placed by the park here in Vinton, Virginia. There have been worldwide actions taking place. Telecommunication companies, again, are losing the battle. They can't get insured, and counties and cities are taking their powers back. Mayors can regulate frequencies and even shut them off. What we need to do is work on changing ordinances here to protect those that we love. This important lawsuit, I must mention, the regulators have exposed fraudulent behaviors of the telecommunication corporations, taxing us to install fiber optics yet not installing it. The Federal Communications Commission has committed tax evasion and are involved in a wireless scandal. What the big telecommunications don't want you to know is that the state can do its own thing, irregardless of the FCC, using a state-run broadband company and making its own profit serving the local communities, which is the end game wish for the regulators' lawsuit. So what's being done here in Virginia? So there are some broadband authorities here in Virginia. The Louisa schools have a separate project to provide fiber connections between all of their school facilities, made possible by some funding. We need a task force to get everything hardwired. There should be a meeting of the minds, in our opinion, at the Virginians for Safe Tech, that on the best way forward, because this is not an integrated policy on what's best for public access and users of this technology. It seems to us that only those who make it and install it, so it's like we're left out of the equation as consumers, and we should be at the center of it and have the strongest voice. These are some agencies that we plan on working with and educating more. They need to be aware of these wireless harms. We have a lot of work ahead of us. So, in comparison to other states, Virginia is behind in educating the public, to say the least, and we don't have anything on our state website yet in regards to electromagnetic frequency radiation. Hopefully in the future, we will update and be able to educate Virginians with a task force. This is also part of our plan. Wired optics are the answer. There is a phenomenal document called Reinventing Wires that explains that the future of landlines and networks, created by the National Institute for Science, Law, and Public Policy in Washington, D.C., written by Timothy, and I don't want to pronounce his last name here, who PhD, international consultant on computer engineering. And what he has to say is that fiber optics provide there's safer option, more privacy, more security. They have unequaled connectivity speeds by using fiber optics. It's cheaper in the long term, more energy efficient, and provides long-term sustainability. The history of the U.S. communication infrastructure increasingly supports the proposition that it's unrealistic to expect these private monopolies and duopolies or triopolies, regulated or unregulated, to make the long-term investment necessary to build the enduring and sustainable public broadband fiber information highway that the country needs. Corporations will invariably seek the cheapest, quickest, and most profitable path, which has led us to the current emphasis on wireless. He goes on to explain why this mistaken upcoming 5G frenzy, with its millions of small cell antennas designed to cluster all neighborhoods and public right-of-ways, is dangerous, wasteful, and unnecessary. Speaking from personal experience, when we wired our home, my husband is a computer IT guy. When we wired our home, we got wall jacks put in and we're using fiber optic cables. We were so impressed with how quick our upload speeds were, simply adding the wire to our wireless router. Okay, so some questions we're looking forward to having answered in working with The Board of Supervisors. Who is regulating the electromagnetic frequency coming off the towers to be sure that it doesn't exceed the maximum permissible exposure limits? Who's that point of contact? How often are these cell towers tested? Are there plans of our county or city becoming a smart city or county? Can we create a wired broadband authority? I'll read in a minute what I know to be true about this. Did Virginia get a refund from the irregulators.org lawsuit? Couldn't we use that, if so, to start hardwiring public buildings and eliminate the 60 gigahertz? So looking up in the regulations, a broadband authority, an authority is created by resolution of a board of supervisors. Although the act is entitled Wireless Service Authority, the act does not prohibit an authority from providing wired service or a combination of wireless and wired services. So the telecommunication industry simply will not change unless we, the public, demand it. Do we want to take the risk of impacting and continuing to expose children and fetuses to these harmful biological effects? Generation Zapped is a great documentary that depicts what is happening here in the USA. 221 world scientists who work with the electromagnetic radiation have sent a formal appeal to the World Health Organization and United Nations and member states in the environmental branch, saying that this has become an epidemic and we need to do something about it. There will always be conflicted science, but they are saying that we should not wait. Some things that we would like to see happen is there are many changes in ordinances that we can make. Our current county ordinances do not protect the children or the elderly or the vulnerable. We simply just do not want towers to be placed in specific areas, right? We need to do our due diligence and protect those vulnerable. Now, in the Virginia Code for Wireless Infrastructure, under 4 has in regards to the locality may disapprove a proposed location or installation of a small cell facility only for the following reasons. Under B, as the reason, the public safety or other critical public service needs can be used as a reason to disprove or a proposed location. So there is some power here in our hands, and I do hope that the Board of Supervisors and others in Virginia whose job it is to look out for us, do their due diligence, and do what is best. Virginians for Safe Technology, we have a petition up on our website to halt 5G. We as Virginians want our concerns addressed to ensure that this 5th generation of technology is operating safely and responsibly at or below the maximum permissible exposure limit for humans. See, 5G is a prototype system. It transfers all liability of operations to the homeowners against their consent to do so, and it uses 22 different frequencies. So not everyone is equally impacted by its adverse ill health impacts, thus making it harder to provide an integrated system solution that is safe and cost-effective for everyone, whereas fiber optics can even that playing field. When you understand what 60 gigahertz could potentially do to the human body and the environment, it is frightening. And this we can talk about sometime in another presentation of sorts, but I would encourage each and every one of you listening to this to go to our website, virginiansforsafetech.org, and sign our petition and help us spread the word. Thank you so much for your time and attention to this matter. I've added some more slides to the PowerPoint with some common points of confusion and facts surrounding them with links so you can look for yourself. It's truly up to each one of us to determine how we can protect the children, animals, birds, bees, and trees, all of which are God's magnificent creations without voices, and to be stewards of this planet. Again, our mission, our motto, my hope is that we've been able to provide you with a broad enough look into these wireless dangers. The education continues, and we'd be happy to connect with you and work with you. If you have questions for us, feel free to send us an email, connect with us on our website, and we will do our best to get back to you as quickly as possible. Here are just some slides with the points of confusion. In fact, thank you so much for listening. I'm going to briefly go through these and end the video. Look forward to connecting with you. Feel free to stop the video and take pictures as needed. And again, you can find this PowerPoint will be up on our website, virginiansforsafetech.org.